Does kissing up have its privileges? Apparently, that seems to be the case for New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Let's break it down. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is The Breakdown. So, in a very shocking move today, the case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been dropped. So, a judge dismissed federal corruption charges against Mayor Adams, ending the first criminal case against a New York City mayor in modern history, and kind of shows how the current presidential administration is remaking prosecutorial powers to advance his own agenda. So, here's the backstory. Mayor Eric Adams was involved in a wide-sweeping corruption case. Charges had been brought against him by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, and that case was supposed to move forward. Well, once this president took office, Mayor Adams was on bended knee from the get-go, begging for a break. The linchpin here was that New York City is very important to this presidential administration's plan of executing mass deportations. Why? Because New York City is very much a hub for immigrants in terms of, thinking back from all the way from Ellis Island, right? Like New York was sort of the hub and the first place that many immigrants came before they went to the rest of the country. But even more so, many immigrants have family members and other connections in the greater New York area. So it's logical that that's where people would land first before kind of getting settled and moving on from there. So New York City has been always someplace that was very high on this administration's radar in terms of deportations. Eric Adams knew this. And so he kept kind of dangling that as a carrot in terms of, hey, I can help you with this if you get these charges dropped against me. And because it's federal charges, the U.S. Attorney's Office could take its direction from the Attorney General and dismiss the charges. So apparently he got his wish. So now the charges have been dropped, and the Judge Dale Ho, shout out to him because he was at the ACLU, ironically, while I was as well. And he refused to let the government leave open the option of reinstating these charges now that they've been dropped. So there's a whole concept of dismissing a case with prejudice or without prejudice. A prosecutor can dismiss a case at any time for whatever reason, but that dismissal can come in one of two ways. If it's without prejudice, it means that the case can be refiled at a later point in time. Of course, statute of limitations and other things do apply, but generally it leaves the door open for charges to be filed again in the future. Or the case can be dismissed with prejudice, meaning that's it, DOA, thanks for playing, the case is over. So the judge here was like, all right, prosecutors can dismiss the charges, but it has to be with prejudice. Because in his ruling, he said, everything here smacks of a bargain. Dismissal of the indictment in exchange for immigration policy concessions. And he's like, I'm not going to let the feds hold this over his head. You guys have decided you want to drop the charges? Fine. But we're not going to allow you, I'm not going to allow you to keep this over Mayor Adams's head so that if he doesn't comply in the way that you want him to, then all of a sudden these corruption charges come back. So kudos to him for making sure that the justice system is not really used as leverage and that it should play out the way it is. If you have evidence, you move forward. If you don't, you don't. There's that. But putting that to the side for a second, this whole thing is completely unusual. Now, it's not unusual for charges to be dropped in exchange for some kind of bargain, but this is very highly politically tinged. This case was a culmination of a huge drama within the Department of Justice. So first off, Mayor Adams was indicted last year on 5 counts, including bribery, fraud, soliciting illegal foreign campaign donations, and other related charges. He pleaded not guilty, of course, denied any wrongdoing. So once the indictment was returned in September, the prosecution was going at it gung-ho, right? They were aggressively pursuing this, and they were ready to move forward with trial in this year. Well, new presidential administration comes into place. The mayor is very pivotal to this administration's deportation efforts. So the new Department of Justice under this current administration ordered the prosecution to drop the charges. Now, the options were as follows when you kind of think back to where we all were with this, right? Eric Adams could have A, had the charges dismissed, or B, he could have gone to trial, been convicted, and then the president would have been in a position to have to give him a pardon. The pardon route would have been messier. So it's logical and understandable why everybody wanted to pursue the route of the charges getting dropped, because that way it leaves Mayor Adams the ability to go around and say, this was all politically motivated, it was a witch hunt, blah, blah, blah. And it also keeps the administration's hands somewhat clean because they didn't have to get involved in the pardon process. So there's that. Well, pressure starts to be placed on the interim U.S. attorneys in Manhattan to drop the charges. Now, the interim U.S. attorney at the time was Danielle Sassoon, and she refused to obey the order. She was like, no, this was not a political prosecution. There was evidence. We worked on this. We brought it to fruition. We're ready to move forward. So no, I'm not going to drop this case. She resigns. Well, of course, they appoint someone else to take her place. And she was not the only one that had resigned. A number of assistant U.S. attorneys and other high-ranking officials within the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office also tendered their resignations because they were like, we can't abide this, right? So someone else was now appointed. This now new U.S. attorney now moved forward in dropping the charges. But the question is, was it going to be with prejudice or without prejudice? With prejudice means that can't file it again. Without prejudice means it could be filed again. So Judge Ho was like, listen, it's not going to be a situation where you can use this as leverage over Mayor Adams. I'm not going to co-sign this. This is not okay. You're going to drop these charges and it's going to be with prejudice, meaning you can never file it again. Too bad, so sad, it's a wrap. This whole case is just problematic on so many levels. Number one, the fact that you can have quid pro quo and be able to get yourself out of criminal trouble by helping out the presidential administration is a problem. Secondly, Mayor Adams is going to twist himself sideways to do everything that this administration wants him to do, even though this case is no longer hanging over his head, because again, this was an example of the power that this president is looking to exert. But underlying all of it is the issue of prosecutorial discretion. Now, I'm a former prosecutor. This is something that's very close to my heart, and I firmly believe that prosecutors have to be free to follow the evidence, not follow orders. And this is setting up a very dangerous precedent in terms of prosecutors filing charges and then later dismissing them because of outside political pressure. If charges are dismissed, it should be because, oh, wow, my case fell apart, or we found out new evidence that this person wasn't actually the person that did it. Not, oh, I got a phone call from, Pennsylvania Avenue, so now I need to change my position. That's not okay. And that's also leading to a slippery slope as to what justice is going to look like for the regular people. Because again, all of us who don't have the power to, give the president something, what's our justice going to look like? And Judge Ho recognized this and put this in his, very long 78-page ruling where he's already seeing how this is attacking the foundations of our democracy. We have separation of powers for a reason. And when you have the executive trying to get involved in the business of the judicial branch, basically looking at trying to intimidate judges, intimidate prosecutors, and intimidate defendants to do things that may be against their best interest, all for the hopes of getting more power. This is a slippery slope, and I'm not liking where this is going. Stay tuned, because I'm sure there will be some huge deportation actions happening out of New York within the next couple of weeks. I'll be back with more details when they emerge. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this was The Breakdown. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.